Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So this this race was crazy. By this race, the Australian Grand Prix. 2025 Australian Grand Prix. The first race of the season. Absolutely crazy.
If you are new to the sport, and I think everyone has been saying the same
It's
thing.
not like this.
You are so lucky. This was such an incredible race to watch.
Yeah. Just don't expect them to be like this every weekend.
Oh, yeah. No, not at all.
It's going to get boring again. Hopefully. Yeah. For my heart, I need it to get a little bit boring.
I do think it was interesting, just the wide variety of teams in the top 10. I think it really showed you that while a lot of teams have focused on 2026, people are still up and trying to fight in 2025.
I almost don't want the new regulations because the field is so tight right now.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. They're all working towards it, so it's obviously not going to go away. But yeah, I think a lot of people are it's going to just be interesting to see how the cards fall next season, but we're not there yet. So.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss once we get to the actual race. Yeah, it was a whole lot. Watching it at 11 p.m. I went to bed. Did you go to bed?
I took like an hour nap, even though I said I wasn't, but because we're doing something for St. Patrick's Day, like we're hosting.
As you can tell,
so
from our attire.
I needed to take a nap because I've been cooking and stuff. So I was like, it's better that I take like an hour. So I did, yeah.
Okay, so we both took like an hour nap, and then my alarm didn't go off. I feel like this has happened to me a few times for the nighttime races.
Mine went off at 10:30. I hit snooze, went off at 10:45.
It might have gone off, and I might have just slept through.
I finally got up at 10:55, and then you came out. But yeah, it was honestly thank God it was as exciting as it was.
Or else I would have fallen asleep.
I was not asleep whatsoever.
You mean awake?
Well, I wasn't falling asleep whatsoever.
Oh, I thought you were meaning I wasn't. Okay.
Anyways, sorry.
Anyways, we are going to get into it. Okay, MC, where are we?
All right, so the opener this year, we talked about it last weekend, but the opener this year was changed from the last 2 seasons, and we're in Melbourne, Australia. So
it's a brutal first race location.
Yeah, a lot of the pundits were talking about this, and same with I think a few of the drivers, just kind of talking about how preseason testing at Bahrain is so drastically different than
racing. Because you have the runoffs there, where here you have gravel traps or you have grass,
yeah. So, the title of this race was the Formula 1 Louis Vuitton Australia Grand Prix 2025. For those that don't know, there was a big deal between Formula 1 and LVMH, which is the conglomerate of all of these fashion
that
companies.
One really rich family that owns everything, basically.
Yeah. So, you're going to see a bunch of, I think, similar names like this as opposed to what we've seen in the past. And this is in Albert Park at the Albert Park Grand Prix circuit. So it's not a traditional, it's not permanently there. It's literally in a nature park.
Yeah, it's literally a park in the center of Melbourne.
So I really enjoy this circuit. It's, I don't know, I think it's just
I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there's a few turns where I'm like, if you don't get that perfect, you're so absolutely fucked.
Yeah. So the first Grand Prix was held here in 1996, and the circuit length, so one lap around is 5.278 kilometers or 3.28 miles. So they're going to do 58 laps around this circuit, which comes out to a race distance of 306.124 kilometers or 190.217 miles. The lap record was placed last year in a Ferrari by Charles Leclerc, and he did the lap in 1:19.813 seconds.
There are definitely no records set this time.
No, due to
Due to
weather.
everything.
There are 14 turns on this racetrack, and then there are 2 DRS zones. So, DRS detection zone 1 is between turns 6 and 7, and then it begins after turn 8, and goes quite a distance until turn 11. DRS detection zone 2 is right before turn 12. And then before turn 13, sorry, and then activation begins after turn 14. So, honestly, I think this is like one of the trickier circuits because of the narrowness. Just because, like Emma said, the gravel was a factor that was affecting a lot of the drivers throughout several practices.
Well,
So
and parts of that was even changed from last year to this year, where like the curb going into, I think it was like turns 9 and 10 was made a bit more on like a decline, so
mhm,
that like it just would be a little bit easier on the cars, but it was rough
yeah,
from the very
but
beginning.
yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
circuit, and
Okay.
yeah.
We're gonna get into free practices. Free practice 1. I took a bunch of notes for the free practices. I was very proud of myself for being on top of my notes. Sometimes I'll start taking notes and then I'll just stop halfway through. And then if the race is during breakfast time, you can't expect me to take notes while I'm eating and watching.
Luckily, these were like in the evening, or we rewatched in like the afternoon,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
were able to.
So for FP1, the first thing that happened really was Liam Lawson tapping the wall at turn 9. Boy.
I think there's been quite a lot of expectation based off of just general discussion around Liam Lawson and the fact that there were other more experienced drivers like Yuki who were
Passed
overlooked.
over.
And so I think that there is weight on his shoulders for the importance of his drives. And so um I'm sure that there's a level of pressure pushing into
Oh
him
yeah,
that
I don't envy his position.
yeah.
That second seat at Red Bull is cursed, truly.
Yeah, it's tough.
And speaking of the gravel, Max skidded over the gravel. I don't have the actual turn that it was at, but he skidded over the gravel. I'm guessing it was the either turn 6 or turn 9, one of those. Um, At about 40 minutes left, there was a red flag because there was gravel all over the track. So this was something that they saw all throughout the weekend because people kept dropping a wheel into the gravel traps. Then even if it was just like an inch of your wheel into the gravel traps, then it would throw gravel all over the track.
Well, and at first they thought that like someone had wiped out because
Yeah,
of
and
the
nobody
amount,
did.
and it wasn't one singular person. It was the fact that everyone's tires kept touching, and the way it would kick up, it just ended up
Yeah.
creating debris on the track.
Yeah. And then so that caused a red flag, and then 5 minutes later, a green flag came up. And then very quickly, Carlos then topped the times on soft tires. This was like we didn't want to jinx it with it being FP1, but it was like, what? What's going on? Is Williams good this year? Is this the year that we were supposed to have last year?
There was a lot of like excited laughing. Like
Yeah.
we were just in disbelief.
And then something that was really sad, with about 22 minutes left to go, Ollie Behrman crashed at turn 9 and 10. It was the gravel trap, it caught him, and then he just hit the wall from that. Um, it was sad because it was just like off to a rough start. He didn't have the roughest weekend, I don't think, compared to some of the other rookies. He finished the race, which is a positive.
I mean, here's the thing. For us, last season, when we last season was the first full season that we watched, right? And so we didn't have any we didn't have any rookies
When I
coming
feel
in.
like when people like Ollie stepped in for the few races that they did, there wasn't this immense pressure. It was just get the car to the finish line, like, with no damage. I think there was pressure because you're stepping in, but, like, you don't have time to think about it because he stepped in on, like, a Saturday like, Saudi Arabia or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I also just think that, like, their rookies' mistakes are going to be made,
yeah,
and while it's not wanted, it's going to happen. And I think that there is, like, wiggle room for rookies,
yeah,
Obviously, there's a level that they can only withstand, like we've seen, but it was the first weekend. It was expected.
yeah. I agree. And then in the last minute, we see George crash into the straight into turn 4. It was just like very strange. It was like through the runoff, and he just like went straight into it. And I think part of his like front wing was damaged,
Hmm.
and everybody was like, "What? This is not normal to see a crash in that spot." But I guess it happened.
It was honestly kind of random.
Yeah,
That's all I can really say about
it
it.
made no sense. FP2, I didn't take any notes for. We watched that while we were working in the middle of the day. But the one thing to comment on is the fact that Ollie Behrman's car was not ready for FP2.
Hmm.
His engineers were working very fast to try to get it ready. And he did put his helmet on at the last few minutes, and I think they were really wanting to get him out, but then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then FP3, unfortunately, 5 minutes in, he went off into the gravel and crashed again, causing another red flag, and he was out for the rest of the session, which is devastating.
Yeah, it's not the first showing that any rookie really wants.
No. One thing is like one crash in one practice session, but then that means he only had like really 35-40 minutes across the entire all 3 practice sessions to actually practice, which is tough at a track like Melbourne.
Yeah, it's not ideal, especially because in past formulas they have been at this track. So
Yeah.
while they don't have the experience in a Formula One car, which is significantly different than,
Well,
earlier.
that showed us a lot in the rain how different it was for them.
Yeah, and I think one thing to remember again is that, like, this is gonna happen. Now, it's kind of what you get for choosing a rookie,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
I'm
so,
hoping that they're kind to him given that it was the first race of the season, and at least in the race almost every single rookie crashed. Um
yeah,
except for him and one other. So,
yeah, and I think that at the end of the day, like, we have to give it like 2-3 like weekends.
yeah,
That's the way
I
I look
agree.
at it, especially because this was tough. This was not an easy weekend for a
No.
lot of them.
No. Okay. I think that's really no, we did have more. Liam sorry. Liam had a mechanical issue and was in for like the rest of the practice session. It was very strange. Nothing was ever explained properly for that one. But they all had to fix that. And Ruth Buscom had gone down there and was commentating from it. And she said if it was a really, really bad issue, then both people from the site. Nope, that was for Ollie's. It's actually a serious issue because the head engineer or like designer was on Liam's side of the garage, and
Mm,
so it was going to be a bit more of work to do.
okay.
Um I really liked having Ruth do that kind of like walk along the pit lane commentary. I love Will Buxton, and I do miss him actually for the weekends. But having Ruth comment like that, walking along the pit lane whenever there's a crash, and then going to that garage and talking about it and almost examining how it is, I thought it was really insightful.
Yeah.
So she, oh my gosh, what was I gonna say?
Kudos.
Pat on the back to you, F1 TV.
Yeah, I mean, we said this last year when she was added on. We just thought, like, the insights that she brought added a level that I don't think anyone had brought before.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just, yeah, I think what she says is something that we weren't kind of getting prior.
No.
And it's just stuff that someone that has been on teams would understand, you know, and no offense to the other pundits, they're great, but yeah, I just think it's really valuable for
Agreed.
spectators.
And then at one point, this isn't how it stayed, but at one point, everybody else had done laps on softs, and then Alex Albon came out on a hard and ended up in P2 on a hard ahead of everybody on a soft, which made no sense. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Again, excited laughter because
Yeah.
it was just disbelief.
Oh, also a team to really give some praise for this weekend. V-Carb.
Yeah.
What the actual heck? Where did the speed come from? I'm not complaining again, but that was crazy performance.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it continues. I hope that it continues on the up and up because it was so unexpected.
I don't think that they even expected it.
Yeah.
Yuki in the post-race interview was like, yeah, there were even some moments that we were a little surprised about the performance, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now we're done with practice. We are going to move on to qualifying. Qualifying. For Q1, we have Ollie get out on track. This was actually quite sad. He was just taking all the L's. This was not a great weekend. We have him get out on track, and in his first lap, they realize that his gearbox is broken.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that they can do to fix
like,
it and allow him to get back out.
Up past 4. It was
And so he had to
sad.
go in and couldn't even do anything for qualifying, which was very disappointing. And I'm sure really upsetting for him, but honestly, I think it might have saved him in the end.
It's okay. You can only rise up from here.
Yeah, things only get better.
Yeah.
It can't get worse.
Hopefully.
I don't think it can get worse.
Yeah.
We'll see. You never know. Liam went off into the grass at one point, and that really made no sense, but it happened. And then I also was afraid that Kimi Antonelli's car was about to burst into flames.
Why?
Remember he made, I think it was turn 9 and 10, he went into the gravel, and then the bottom of his car skimmed the curb, and the sparks from the floor, I thought the floor was on fire.
Yeah. No, it definitely showed probably I think the worst visual
it was genuinely painful to watch.
So that was not good.
No. So those out in Q1 were, for P16, it was Kimi Antonelli, P17, Nico Hülkenberg, P18 was Liam Lawson, P19 was Esteban Ocon, and P20, because he didn't get to do anything, was Ollie Behrman. We had some really interesting people move on. A bunch of the rookies did move on to Q2, and that was very exciting for them to be able to make it out. Bortoletto outperforming his teammate Hülkenberg in qualifying. That's a really great way to start off the season. Yeah. On to Q2, we have speaking of Bortoletto, we have him almost off. He almost spun out and he saved it somehow. It was very close. Lewis ended up spinning around completely.
Yeah.
In the middle of Jack Doohan's fast lap.
Yeah. And Jack was putting up a good time.
I know. It was so sad for Jack.
Yeah.
And so Jack ended up not making it past this session, which was so sad. Because I don't think it... Well, okay, so Lewis was turned around, and then because of that, a yellow flag went up, so he had to slow down a bit. And then he could finish his lap, but he just still wasn't able to...
get in a fast enough time with how much he had to slow down.
But I mean, that's qualifying. There's always a chance that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even raining at this point. This was dry, and all of this shit was happening.
Yeah. It was just, honestly, it was foreshadow.
Truly. I think this weekend was cursed.
Yeah.
The whole weekend. None of them, I was going to make a really bad joke.
Anyways.
Do you want me to say my bad joke?
You want to share it.
In honor of St. Patrick's Day, I have to say it. None of them had the look of the Irish.
Keep reading your notes for the love of God.
I'm sorry.
That was so bad.
I had to. My last note was that it was actually at turn 6 that Lewis ended up being turned around, and so those who got out in qualifying were, for P11 was Isaac Hadjar, P12 Fernando Alonso, P13 Lance Stroll, P14 Jack Doohan, and P15 Gabriel Bortoleto. So for Q3, nothing crazy really happened. Both McLarens went out like pretty early. And so Oscar actually went off a tad, and so that slowed down his first run. He probably would have had a higher time if it weren't for that. And then Lando's first time that he had done actually was deleted because all 4 tires were off the track, so track limits. But other than that, it was a pretty chilled, like nothing crazy other than like certain people doing really well. Carlos Sainz wasn't able to I think he had to slow down because like something happened with one of his laps, so he ended up not being able to do like a faster lap for some of them. So this was the order of the top 10. So P1 we have Lando Norris, P2 Oscar Piastri, a McLaren front row lockout. P3 we had Max Verstappen. I've decided the worst place for McLaren for Max to start is the second row.
Probably.
Specifically P3.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's working out to his advantage right now, especially with the way...
What, Lando?
Or no, Max.
What do you mean?
Never mind. I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Okay. P3, Max Verstappen. P4, George Russell. P5, Yuki Tsunoda. Let's go!
That's the thing, like, Q3, I think the most exciting aspect of it was the few middle pack people that made it up. That it was like, oh my god, this is such a surprise.
Well, and then P6 was Alex Albon.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then P7 after Yuki Tsunoda and Alex Albon was Charles Leclerc. P8, Lewis Hamilton.
The Ferrari struggled a lot more this weekend.
They're not gelling with the car or the race engineers.
And that's the thing, is that it doesn't seem like it's just the car. It seems like it's just the strategy, the vibes.
I mean, that's classic Ferrari. Are we surprised?
Yeah. I don't know. It just seemed a lot more positive last year.
What if it was Carlos?
Yeah, I honestly, like, seeing how positive he is with Williams.
He seems so happy.
Probably is him.
He actually seems very happy. I'm quite happy for him. P9, it was Pierre Gasly, and P10 was Carlos Sainz.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very exciting qualifying session.
Yeah, it was shocking in good ways.
Yeah. We are going to go into the race and probably just talk about like our favorite moments or just go over some crazy things that happened because there was
a lot.
We cannot break down this race second by second like we usually do because it was hectic.
I think someone said it perfectly online, like, I'm going to have to rewatch this race so many times because so much happened.
I'm
not going to be able to remember it all.
No. Okay, let's get into it. To start the race, Ollie and Liam both started from the pit lane. Ollie obviously started from the pit lane because he needed a new gearbox. Mm-hmm. And then Liam started from the pit lane because he went off into the grass. So he probably had to get some stuff fixed in qualifying.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember why he started.
It was I remember last night being like, huh. But then now I look back at my notes, he went off during qualifying, so that makes sense. And then right away in the formation lap, well, first of all, let's give a weather update for this.
It had always been projected
like a 90% chance of rain.
Like a week ago that it was going to rain. Like it was more or less going to happen on the race day. And it in fact did rain on and off.
It rained and shined and rained and shined and
I don't even know if it shined, but it just rained and stopped.
Yeah.
And so when they started the formation lap, it wasn't raining, but it was wet.
Yeah, so you needed to
So
be on inters.
everyone, I think, was on inters,
Except
right?
one person.
Was
Was
it
it Stroll?
Was on wets?
Hold on. I didn't write that down. I think Stroll was on wets.
Yeah. Anyways, um, so Emma, take it away. What happened in the formation
Oh,
lap?
Isaac Hadjar crashed. He basically, he was trying to, you have to warm up your tires, but then you also have to keep them cool.
It's a
And then
whole thing.
it's also when you're
complicated.
going at that slow of a pace, but trying to keep your tires warm, but then also a little bit cooler, and you're not really used to an F1 car yet. The torque of an F1 car is going to be a lot more intense than of an F2 car. And so his wheel, and also something that we found out is that the paint, because it's a temporary track, the paint that is used on the track
Is slippery.
which apparently like regular paint on like a road is actually slippery for cars like an F1 car, but on like a actual race track, a permanent track, they're using a special kind of paint that's not going to be slippery for the cars. And so his wheel, because the paint was slippery
There was like a wet patch on it.
there was a wet patch on it. His tire slipped onto it, and then he just completely spun out and crashed. And it was devastating because it was a formation lap of his very first F1 race.
He was also like one of the higher.
He was doing so
rookies.
well this weekend too. Like he was performing phenomenally, and he just like everybody online, our hearts are broken for him.
It was
It
the
was
moment, and I hate to like do this because he is an adult, like working an adult job, but it was just the moment where you realize
young
like
they are.
And how new they are to this world, like how much like this means to them. And it's funny because it's actually Isaac was one of the rookies that whenever he did his like his free practice session, he was always so excited, so grateful, so thankful every
Yeah.
time he did it for the team, for the experience. And so it's no shock that he would react so emotionally to this.
I actually really appreciated how emotional he was in this reaction, rather than like in the past we've seen some people where they've crashed in like the formation lap or early on, and it's kind of just been like the frustration. But like for me, seeing him so emotional just showed the devastation and how much love he has for this.
Yeah,
And how like yeah, I'm sure he had a lot riding on this and a lot of pressure and everything, but like this was supposed to be his debut, and like he was doing so well the whole weekend.
well, luckily he wasn't alone.
Well, so he gets out of the car and he's standing there with one of like the race marshals or whatever, and his helmet's on, which isn't abnormal for them to keep their helmet on until they get back to the paddock, and his hand is inside where inside his visor.
So you just know.
You just know that he's holding his face like crying. And then he's walking through the paddock finally. They take him back to the paddock. And then Lewis Hamilton's dad, Anthony Hamilton, comes straight to him and stops him and like embraces him and comforts him and talks to him. And in a post-race interview, Isaac said that that Anthony Hamilton just said like, keep your head high, like this is just the beginning, like you're going to be fantastic next weekend.
I think the thing is too is like I just said, he wasn't alone, and there are some big names that this affected this weekend,
and Lewis is his idol, and to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
like your idol's parent come to you afterwards, like
Yeah.
I'm sure that meant a lot as well.
Oh yeah.
And even the post race, I think when something like that happens, don't make them do a post race interview.
Ugh,
Bro was about to burst into tears
the
in those
mandatory
questions.
aspect of it.
It's really
Crazy.
it's robotic at times sometimes. Anyways, so that happened. Devastating. We hope the best for you next weekend. Truly.
Oh my god, and
truly.
I'm sure it's gonna be such a different race for them.
Yes. So the race eventually starts again. They do a restart. And Max passes Oscar into turn 2. Kind of saw that one coming, given that I knew that he was going to pass one of the McLarens, if not both, to be honest, off the start. It happens. But then in turn 5, Doohan crashed. So Jack Doohan crashed. And we were just like, another one.
Yeah, it was it was just like another rookie, like another one.
And they show his dad then in the garage.
Ugh.
I couldn't read his dad's reaction at all. And then as they're all behind the safety car because of Jack, then Carlos crashes. I just see a Williams on the wall, and I'm like, oh no.
It was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was.
So many
We
emotions.
couldn't catch a break.
So late at night.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be like falling asleep during this race, because sometimes that happens with these late night races where like I'll wake up for them and then it's not really that entertaining and I'll kind of fall asleep. But this one I was wide awake immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So at lap 7, the safety car ended up going in, and this point, the track is drying on the driving line, but then you still need to cool your tires because you're on inters. But then it's just a whole shit show. So Lando actually was sliding around a little bit, and because he wasn't cooling the tires yet, and so he needed to do that. By lap 12, the DRS had been enabled. And that allowed Kimi Antonelli, I was going to say Kimi Räikkönen, Kimi Antonelli to pass Hülkenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Kimi, I got to say, like, hats off to you. You did a pretty good job this weekend. You passed a lot of cars during the actual race. And I think he had a pretty decent race.
Yeah.
He definitely was one of the people who got lucky with the ending.
I definitely think he lucked out on the ending, but again, I think seeing how many
he had some really ballsy passes too.
Yeah, and I just think the ability to keep it calm and collected and to make passes in weather like this just kind of shows, like, maybe Toto is right.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But actually, Kimi then did slide around a little bit at turn 4, and
who
Hülkenberg
wasn't?
did pass him. And Max lost it into turn 11, and Oscar ended up being able to pass Max then. So Oscar was back in second, so it was a McLaren 1-2, and then Oscar just took off from there.
Yeah, you could tell that the McLaren
was great on the tires, and the Red Bull was not.
Yeah, the degradation, and this is something that Max talked about post-race, degradation was something that was really affecting the Red Bull's tires significantly worse.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see if they bring an upgrade aspect to improve that.
Yeah. Kimi eventually by lap 18 was able to pass Hülkenberg again, thankfully. Lap 20, we see Liam Lawson pass Esteban Ocon for 15th. Liam had been at the back of the pack for a while. I'm not sure when this happened, but there was one point where Charles says to his race engineer, "Is there a leakage?"
So, hold on, it hadn't happened yet. It happened when the rain started.
I don't think it did yet. I don't think it did.
I thought it happened when the rain started, but anyways.
Well, so Charles goes, "Is there a leakage?" And his race engineer goes, What do you mean?" And he goes, "There's water all over the seat of the car. I'm sitting in water."
He's like,
"Well, maybe it's the water."
The water.
And Charles' response was, "Let's add that to the words of wisdom."
It's already going viral online.
Well, and other things that were happening between Lewis and his race engineer, where his race engineer was trying to kept telling him to press K1. Like, because Lewis was like, "Where am I slow? Like, tell me where I'm slow at so that I know where I need to improve." And his race engineer would tell him immediately, and then he would be like, "Try doing this," which was like pressing a button I think it was like for the like battery system. And they were getting a little, like, Lewis in the most polite way possible was getting a little short with him. He was like, "I don't need this. I like, thank you. Like, I'll do it on my own time, please." Like,
I think you're seeing the growing pains of someone who was very plugged in with his team because of the longevity of the relationship. But I mean, the coarseness between racer and engineer, this isn't the first time we've seen it. You know, I mean, Charles has kind of rubbed with his engineer. I mean, we talked about it and joked about it before, but I think Carlos can get along with anything and anyone.
Yeah, I think Carlos is one of the few drivers that can do that.
And so I'm just curious to see if, I mean, and last year they made changes with Charles.
That's
I'm
true.
curious to see if there will be changes with Lewis, but it does seem a little tense. So I'm curious to see if it's going to be something that he talks about or works on.
Yeah,
But
you never
we'll
know.
see.
Okay. By lap 22, Max was 10 seconds behind Lando, which means he was 8 seconds or 9 seconds behind Oscar.
Also, something that a lot of people, including us, kind of complain about, and I think everyone corrected this like pretty late on in the race, but they just didn't add the times, like the live times to the screen. They just
also
had
didn't have the pit stop
names.
times.
And everyone, I mean, I don't know about you, but I really depend on those times a lot, like just for my sanity
Or
and
at least to know the gaps of where people
the
are.
race is. And I just like I ended up pulling up like the data channel on my phone through like the app, but I was just getting so stressed because I was like, I cannot tell where anyone is based off of just visual length between cars. So thanks for eventually putting it up F1 TV.
F1 TV, if you could possibly also have the times for pit stops, that would be greatly appreciated, because I would like to know how long everyone's taking for stuff.
It's okay. It's
for the future.
Just,
it's a learning curve.
Weekend one.
I mean, y'all corrected the McLaren symbol, which was red at the beginning of the weekend, to now orange. So progress.
Yeah, we're moving on up.
Yes. Bring it back, please, though. Lap 23, we see Kimi Antonelli pass Lance Stroll. And then Oscar goes wide a bit at turn 6 on lap 33, and he ends up going back like a second. So instead of being 0.3 of a second behind Lando, he's like 1.3 seconds.
So
this also was a team order situation, which was not the best thing.
So this has been, if you're new, if you're not new, you are very familiar with this from last season, but this has been a big point of contention with McLaren. Team orders, we've talked about it a little bit, especially with like the Get Ready episode that we just posted, but team orders is always a little bit of an uncomfortable situation for every team and drivers in general. You know, their biggest competition is their teammate. That's what a lot of them allude to. And a lot of them have also like just pointed out the fact that even though media shows them as like friends, like they're not really, they're just all in the same league together. And so McLaren, of course, ran into this issue first weekend and didn't really address it in the way that I think a lot of people felt it should have been addressed, especially since it was Oscar's home race.
So, commentators afterwards, Jolyon agreed with a lot of spectators and was like, I didn't like this. Ruth Buscombe agreed with the strategist and said that it was the correct choice. They made the call for team orders when Lando and Oscar were getting close to having to pass they were about to lap cars. And so there was going to be traffic and it was kind of going to be a shit show. So they just called for team orders to make things a little bit more organized.
And
so
basically
there weren't any
told
issues.
Oscar to hold place, stay in second.
And his response was, I'm faster, but okay. Yeah. Which I understand. It would not be fun to get team orders when you're actually faster than your teammate. Yeah. You're about to pass him at your home race, which has never been won by an Australian. I can understand the frustration.
Yeah.
Especially given how the rest of his race went.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where people kind of get frustrated with the whole stay back at that point, because then a handful of laps later it changes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's something that, I mean, he obviously has a lot of trust in the team. He signed an extension. So, like, it goes without saying that, you know, he does feel comfortable and at home there. I just think McLaren just needs to be a little stronger in their decision around that entire scenario, because I think they have two very, very equally good drivers.
Yeah. It was an interesting situation. My next one, no, which we already covered, was Lewis and his race engineers convos. Yeah, quite an interesting situation. Lap 34, Fernando Alonso, the person who has the longest career of all time in F1, was into the wall. So the rookie shouldn't feel bad because...
Yeah, guys, remember, if Fernando Alonso can do it, anyone can do it.
And Fernando Alonso couldn't do it. So it's okay that you couldn't either. Fernando, we love you. You're one of our favorite drivers. Seeing both Spaniards off was really painful emotionally, but it's fine.
Yeah, it was definitely, it hurt. It hurt the soul.
It really did.
But
anyways, lap 41, we finally see some people go in to change their tires. So lap 41, we see Ollie go in for mediums and Esteban, but then shortly after, a couple of seconds later, they needed to all basically go in for 5 laps later. They all had to go in for inters because of the rain.
So for some quick context, at this point, there had been conversations. There's different classes of rain when the
Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3
are discussing it with their
Brian
drivers.
Bazzi said to Charles, "We are expecting Class 3 rain at lap
And
46. Charles' response was, "That is a lot of rain."
So just understand that to go onto slick tires with this impending rain was kind of a little insane, but they had been on inters.
They were trying
for
to
a
make
while.
the inters last, I think.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of people need to remember is that they had been on inters for a while, and when there isn't water, the inters don't hold up as well. They're a wet tire for a reason. They need rain.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a toss up for a lot of the middle of the pack drivers. Now, something I do want to point out that Williams discussed was they were up in the air about strategy, and then Carlos came in and
Carlos signs the strategist.
And was like,
smoothest operator ever.
But he was like, there's going, no one's
He's
gonna
like,
be able
the
to
moment
stay
that
on
this
track.
rain, that radar hits us, everyone's coming in.
Yeah, so I think you were just seeing a lot of teams struggle on how to make the call with just you're fighting with Mother Nature at that point.
Yeah.
So
okay, so now there's a lot that happens over the next couple of laps that I gotta get out in a couple of minutes. Okay, so a 5-second penalty happens for Bortoletto because he has an unsafe release. I think he almost crashed into Liam Lawson. It happens.
Yeah.
Yuki ends up passing Charles Leclerc, but then he locks up on lap 44. Lap 45, Oscar is off, but he ends up reversing it back onto the track. And this was really upsetting because he dropped from 2nd to 13th. And it was
a lap behind.
But at least
he got it out. He got it on track.
Yeah, because that's much better than DNFing your home race. And the cheers from the crowds, you could hear them from the TV.
Yeah.
Lap 45, 46-ish, we see Lando go in for inters, and then Max go in for inters. Oscar goes in as well. It's a whole thing.
Everyone's going in.
Yeah. For those who didn't go in for inters, they are shitting the bed because it starts downpouring. Yeah, Ferrari didn't go in for inters like everybody else did. They went in after the fact, because they couldn't drive around the track. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Lap 47, Liam Lawson goes into the wall. That happened.
That's it.
Lap 47, also, Bortoletto is out as well. He also goes into a wall.
It happens.
It happens. Lap 48, the Ferraris finally go in for inters. So they go in 2 laps after everybody else, which is crazy talk, but whatever. Lap 51, the safety car finally ends. And then Kimi is actually given a 5-second time penalty for unsafe release, which later on, after some petition, ends up going away. But when he got the 5-second time penalty, that ended up moving him back 1 place, because he actually ended up passing Alex Albon at the very end of the race. So it ended up being Lando, Max, which they were very close. It was I was afraid that Max was going to pass him. But Lando, Max, George, Kimi, and Alex in the top 5. Okay, now that I went through all that really fast, we are going to talk about our final thoughts. We We had 6 cars DNF. We had a couple of time penalties. We had the home driver just completely fall.
So some things I want to highlight just quickly since Emma sped run through the ending of that race.
Sorry, guys. We have our timing is off.
But one thing to note was when that safety car came out after the Bortoleto Lawson crashes, Ollie and Oscar, who were very close to each other, were a lap behind everyone. So with the safety car, they were able to actually catch up with the rest of the group. So Oscar was able to walk back into the points. One thing to note.
Yes.
So that was an incredible feat. Unfortunately, it wasn't the record-breaking performance that, a lot of people wanted, including himself. The other thing to note was the very ending. I don't think I've had a more nail-biting ending because Max and Lando
For the win.
Max and Lando were tight.
Yeah, I really thought that Max was gonna use DRS in the end.
I really thought it was
Lando.
gonna be like a just something crazy.
Moment.
Yeah. But it was such an exciting ending.
I gotta give credit to Lando for all the haters that said that he does not know how to drive like a champion. I think that he stayed very calm and collected throughout that hecticness, which in the past, I think last year, he would have been a little on edge. I think this year he has the confidence and calmness to drive as he needs to win the championship.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the performance that he needed to bring to the table to, really solidify his standing. Now I hope they continue. Unfortunately, Oscar really got negatively affected, but he was able to get the car back onto track and get points.
His post-race interview was brutal.
Oh, I mean,
it looked like he was crying. He had been crying. I mean, understandably. I don't think we've ever seen him so upset.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the pundits were saying, but
never in my life did I think that I would see Mercedes in 2025 be on top of the World Constructors Championship right now, which feels crazy to say, but it's true.
Yeah, and kudos to Williams. Really big kudos to them for such a big amount of points this early into the season.
Gosh. You know what that means?
What?
Alex Albon is 6th in the Drivers' Championship right now.
Yeah. Oscar's 9th right now.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Williams beat both Ferraris, guys.
What is Williams in the constructors standing?
They're 4th.
Yeah.
Williams is above Ferrari, I think, in the constructors standings.
Maybe. I will have to double check.
Wow. What a time to be alive. Yeah. I knew that this was going to be a crazy season, but I didn't think it was going to start off like this. To all the rookies. It's just the first race.
It's going to be okay.
It gets better. I understand how upsetting it is and how frustrating it can be if things don't go your way, but it does get better.
Don't get media trained. The truthfulness is awesome.
Yes. Y'all have made the fans fall in love with you guys so fast because you're funny and charismatic and you seem like yourselves. And I also really like the straight, blatant honesty from all of them.
Yeah.
Like Kimi Antonelli being like, yeah, I almost did the same thing when Isaac had gone off.
Yeah.
Made me feel so happy because it was like, thank you for admitting that you could have done the same thing.
Yeah.
That you almost did do the same thing. I feel I feel emotionally attached to them.
Oh, I'm so scared.
Rookies.
I'm so afraid.
That I really cannot handle them having another bad weekend. All I'm doing, I'm just praying that China is good to them. We could probably talk about this race forever, but we're gonna not do that. So normally we do our get ready episode for a race weekend, but China's only had a few Grand Prix before, and Zhou is the first ever Chinese driver to our knowledge and the internet's knowledge, unless something else. I don't know.
Anyways,
I don't know. And so there's not really much for us to discuss, if at all. So we are not having a get ready episode for China, but we will be back to do a recap of it. And then there is a weekend off, and then I can't remember the race after that. I think it's Bahrain or Saudi Arabia or something like that. I think it is Bahrain or Saudi Arabia because I think that they delayed them this year because of Ramadan.
Yeah, I'm not
so
sure.
they don't have to happen on Saturdays again.
I can't remember the schedule, to be really frank with you.
Yeah. Anyways, what a weekend. What a way to start the season.
If you haven't watched it, go. It was incredible.
F1 is back, baby.
Yeah.
Could not be happier.
Ugh.
Truly. All right. On this note, please make sure to follow us, like all of the things, comment on all the things, subscribe, whatever you want to do. We're going to go finish cooking for St. Patrick's Day and drink Guinness. All right.
Oh my god.
Bye, guys.
Bye.